You may have noticed by now that it's a tactic of the finger-wagging, perennially correct management class to frame everything outside of centre-left/left-wing neoliberal opinion as a, quote, threat to democracy.
How worried should the party be about the threat, or the challenge, I should say, from Farage?
Well, I think people should be very concerned about reform because they're not just a threat to individual parties, but I actually think they're a threat to democracy because they are offering easy answers to real problems, which are not a solution and will just increase people's distrust and disillusionment.
Now, as I've said on this channel many times, I don't really believe Farage is going to come in and save the day. I don't think elections can save the day. I think we need a civilizational rebirth to save Britain and the West at this point. However, the nerve of these uni-party politicians to come on television and tell everyone that reform is a threat to democracy after what they've done. It's enough to drive you absolutely potty until you come to peace with the fact that uni-party liberals like Harriet Harmen don't understand that what they think democracy is simply what they want to happen. This is because they view liberalism as the correct worldview. They don't realise that we're living under a system of liberal authoritarianism. That's why when anybody even mildly thinks outside of it, to her that's a threat to democracy because it translates as a threat to her worldview. It's also especially galling because, as many of us have figured out by now, democracy doesn't actually exist. Yes, you can have a decision between Labour or Tory, variable tax rates or which level of social liberalism suits you. However, when it comes to the major decisions that face the UK and the Western world, we get no say at all. The true things that really matter in our age, that is mass immigration and becoming a minority in our own country, cultural identity, true change in the economy which actually serves the people, you don't get a say on any of that because that's controlled by the globalist elites. That's controlled by what Harriet Harmen calls, quote, democracy. However, I do think this sort of thing plays into the hands of Nigel Farage and Reform. 3 neoliberal finger-wagging bossy women complaining about threats to democracy, which are threats to liberalism. It's all such an obvious cope because Nigel Farage isn't even that out there. I'd like him to be way more radical. However, when it comes to the economy, we all know he's largely a Thatcherite. When it comes to social policy, he's largely a live and let live liberal. He just dares to say things edgy about mass migration, which is enough for people like Harriet Harmen to call him a proto-fascist. But what can we learn from all this? Well, it seems to me that the Uni Party is very threatened by Nigel Farage and Reform. Even though, like Trump in the US, I don't think either of them will rock the boat that much should they both come into power. Don't get me wrong, I prefer Trump and Farage to be in power over the Democrats and the Uni Party. However, I'm more of a traditionalist than a 90s libertarian. Now, that 90s style liberalism is well represented by Trump and Farage. It's MAGA, really. As I say, I don't think it's going to bring that much change in the grand scheme of things. However, it's interesting to see how threatened globalist liberalism is by it. This in turn tells us something quite important and ironic, and that's for all the talk of the globalist liberals of acceptance and tolerance and democracy and breaking social boundaries, when it comes to their own boundaries, they police them fiercely. The boundaries of acceptable opinion are very small. They basically start and end with Blair. Even David Cameron and Rishi Sunak are a bit too edgy for it. So in true Blairite fashion, when Harriet Harmen uses words like democracy, we have to understand that word has been stripped of all real-world meaning and filtered through the globalist liberal public relations spin machine. To the Blairite, remember, optics are always more important than the actual truth. But all of this is a sign of the times. We're witnessing liberal power shift from the age of illusion into the age of raw power, where it's exposed as it truly is. I don't think we should fear that, we should welcome that, because that brings us closer to real change down the line. These are just my thoughts, however, do let me know what you think below. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.